But the problem is the amount of people living on this planet. 6.5 billion people right now, growing to an estimated 9 billion people by 2050. We take a look at the fact that there are currently 50% of us, the whole population, living in urban centers. The United Nations has stated that about 70% of us will be living in urban centers by 2050. 27 megacities, which people, populations over 10 million by that time. Right now there's about 17. So let's take a look at that Earth spin again. But this time, as we're flying past the moon, instead of coming back and looking at the Earth and all of its glory and going, ooh, I live there, beautiful, let's delve into the atmosphere a little bit and take a look at what's going on. David Suzuki, really, on Everest, they have oxygen masks on. It's because there is no oxygen up past towards the peak of Mount Everest. That's how little area that we have to work with. And we're cramming carbon into this and different gases, and we're scraping the Earth, and we're burning fossil fuels, and only 13% of our energy right now comes from renewable sources. And what we need to do is figure out a way to flip that. How do we do it so that most of our energy comes from renewable sources, reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and learn how to capture and store the carbon that we're emitting? We can aspire. We have the intelligence, we have the ability to create societies that rely on technologies that don't damage the Earth, okay? But the problem is, are we going to be able to do that? Ira Magaziner from the Clinton Climate Initiative made a statement a while back in Denver when I was at the Greenville conference there, about 30,000 people there to watch him talk. And he said we had about 10 years to make a difference in climate change, or we're living with the consequences. Now, at that time I think, okay, it's a great thing. Another way of looking at things that are going on this planet, if we take a look at this Earth spinning again, and recognize the fact that the Earth has been around for 4.2 billion years. We've been on the planet literally the thickness of that line, if you can see that, 200,000 years. And the planet's going to be here for millions and billions of years in the future. So we have to realize that with trying to do our work with climate change, we're not trying to save the planet. It's going to be here. We're trying to ensure our survival on it. And I've heard statements where if, for example, we were to disappear off the planet right now, the atmosphere would rebalance itself in about 150 years. That's pretty quick. And if we were to disappear right now, everybody on this planet, the Earth would have absorbed any evidence of our existence within about 1,000 years. Except for things that are stainless steel. So you'll have kitchen sinks and knives everywhere. Climate change. Do we have the global capacity to mobilize at this point? And again, the triple bottom line: environmental opportunity, social response, economic drive to do this. World War II was one example where we might have got a little bit close to the scale of magnitude of change that we need to do. The problem with World War II, one, it's a very negative thing, but it was a generation ago. And do the young people coming up today really understand the amount of effort and the commitment and sacrifice people had to make in order to achieve what they did in World War II? The factories turned over and started making tanks and guns instead of appliances and cars. Women went to the factories, men went off to war. It was a huge, huge undertaking. Maybe more of a pleasant thought is, what is the one thing that's defined the human species through all the ages? Demonstrates our power and authority, spiritual beliefs, cultural sophistication, protects us from harm, and inherently interdisciplinary crossing sectors. And I say to you, it's buildings and infrastructure. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about this. Buildings recount lost civilizations. Ancient Egypt. If the pyramids were not jutting out of the sands, would we know that ancient civilization was even there? Right? Same thing with the Mayan civilization. The jungle would have just completely engulfed that civilization, yet their buildings, their structures came up through the grounds. Does anybody remember in the news, probably the Toronto Star actually, a few months back, There was an aerial shot of an airplane flying over, or maybe it was a satellite image, that had seen a new civilization in the jungles. And the one factor that let us know that they were even there was the roof lines sticking out of the jungle. Right? It's the buildings. The Roman Empire. 1 million people lived in Rome in 337. That was a lot of people back then, one of the biggest cities in the world. Today there's still remnants. We're not tearing down the Colosseum. We're not tearing down these buildings. We revere these. It doesn't matter how much you want to restore your automobile, it's not the same kind of longevity as buildings have. So review some facts for a minute. Population will go to 9 billion people by 2050. People are moving to urban centers, and we spend 90% of our time as urban species inside buildings. 90% of our time, this is a fact. Architectural design, historically, have been benchmarks for economic and cultural success. And now they're also part of the environmental solution to climate change. Buildings and infrastructure contribute 40% of the carbon emissions into the atmosphere. 40%. More than the automotive sector and transportation, more than industry. Buildings, where we live, where we work, where we play. That's our triple bottom line, isn't it? So now sustainable green building design. Can this new architectural movement drive what we need for climate change? And we just released a report in Melbourne last week, Global Green Trends Building Report. We did this in partnership with McGraw-Hill Construction. We interviewed almost 1,000 corporate firms around the world that are working in the field of green building design. About 60% of their portfolio is green. So that was our audience and the people we were interviewing. It's staggering that the type of information they were giving us back. They were confident that the green marketplace was what was going to launch them forward the next 10 years. And I think even more so with the economic state that we're in now, green helps to establish itself in the marketplace, creates a leader. And look at the numbers here. The people that are actually doing green right now and the amount of growth we're expecting. So two opportunities with green buildings. First one is retrofit design. We have a staggering amount of existing building stock that we can't ignore. We can't start tearing things down and throwing it into the landfills. What are we going to do with it? Okay. New building design is obviously the sexiness, the buzz of green buildings. Is what's happening in the new buildings. And what I think is interesting is that up until this point, at least over the past 5 to 8 years, green buildings is about the engineering marvels, about the technologies that go into buildings. But architects now are starting to get some confidence in what green is all about. And when architects and designers and artists start getting confidence, they start to explore. And now we're starting to create a bit of an artistic movement now within green buildings, starting to define the way new civilizations are being designed. And all these buildings here are examples of green designs that are either under construction or about to begin construction. The one on the right in Dubai is the new Trump building. Biomimicry, also the field of biomimicry, the idea is learning from natural systems. How can you design and build based on natural systems? And this one is great. This is a concept where you're taking an old oil drilling rig off the coast. Scientists are moving their families there and they're studying marine life. So now, off the coast, you imagine a big storm comes up, the whole thing closes up and everybody's safe. But then, when it's sunny out, it opens up like a flower and everybody can study and enjoy the natural weather. So it's a great use of biomimicry. Now, with populations growing, the concern also is food. We're building up. We have the architectural abilities and intelligence to build up and densify, but we're still farming flat, taking up lots of land. Vertical farming is a new way of doing it. The idea of creating buildings to actually grow food. Part of the concern is for this is that the energy equation, after about 6 stories, it starts to take more energy than it does to actually produce the food, but they're working on that. And a gentleman by the name of Dixon Depommier, professor at Columbia University, has this idea where he has these small units, about 10, 12 stories tall. The market's at the bottom where people come and they actually buy their food, and it's all grown and the stories above it. So now imagine one of these every 12 blocks or so within an urban context, and all the food is grown within your cities. So to finish up the presentation, I have a question. Will our future designers embrace the environment in the work that they do? Or this next slide is very scary to me. Or will they be charged with the task of protecting us from it?
Right here.